Hey folks, that's not really sloppy sewing. It's actually called curve piecing, and I'd love to teach you how to do it in today's video. Are you ready? Let's get stitching. Well, welcome back everybody to another fantastic teachable tutorial for all of you at home. At least I hope so. This is curved piecing. My name is Rob Appell from Stitchin Heaven. The little show is called Sew Well, where we talk about sewing and sometimes wellness, especially on our Friday live videos. So make sure you check those out. If you haven't seen them, make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're not already, because I just really appreciate knowing how many of you are out there. And again, I love to teach quilting. Sometimes it's full quilt projects, and sometimes it's just the basics of, and that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna do curved piecing. This is not sloppy sewing, folks. This is intentional, and it works great for a lot of free piecing projects. This is great for your crumb quilts, your scrap projects. This is really fun for the modern quilters. There's a lot we can do with this. So at any rate, I want to teach you all the very basics of it. So I guess I better slow down, hit rewind, and get us stitching. All right, okay, sorry, there we are reversed. And like I said, back to the beginning, back to the stash. These are literally, folks, just scraps. Super easy to use. And before we go any further, I'm gonna ask you with all of your practice pieces to not use any strips longer than 22 inches. So to practice our free cutting today, I want you to note no cutting rulers, templates, anything like that on the table, just a wonderful rotary cutter, sharp blade, of course. So right now, I'm just gonna go ahead and take off the folds. Okay, free cutting essentially. And I'm gonna come down here and I'm also gonna cut off the selvages. And I feel like I've got about 10 layers, which is probably a little more than I would recommend normally, but that's the advantages of a nice sharp cutter. Okay, so now our scrap strips are prepped to learn how to do the basics of curved piecing. Once again, Mr. Timms, Ricky Timms himself taught me how to do this. He calls it the caveman style of curved piecing. So this is a very organic, a very easy to use, and a lot of free piecing techniques like you see in the quilt on the side of me here. And so I'm gonna ask you to start with your wider strips as you learn the technique and your practices, okay? So even though we're using the wonderful Shadow Blush by Benartex here, I'm using it on purpose intentionally because this way you can see there is a wrong side and a right side on all of our colors, okay? Because we literally are gonna be working today with our right sides up on all of our parts and pieces. So I want you to have two different fabrics, something that you can definitely see the differences of. Okay, and I like to do a couple little things, and I apologize, Ricky, I don't remember if you teach this or not. So this is one of the things I love to do, is I find a line on my mat, right? And let's just use lucky number 12 down here, and I'm gonna follow it up. I might even take a moment and just mark that here on my number 12 so I can see kind of where I'm looking. Okay, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let my bottom strip lay 1 inch over at least, okay? While I'm learning the technique, you can get more crazy later, but this is just learning. Okay, and then the second strip, again, right sides up, both pieces are right sides up, and I'm gonna go 1 inch past. Okay, so now effectively we have a 2 inch overlap, and that's where we're gonna be able to gently glide the rotary cutter in a curved fashion through here in order to make our cut for our curved piecing. Okay, so that's the first thing I like to do, is give myself at least a 2 inch overlap, 1 inch of each color over that middle line that I'm watching. And then the next thing I like to do is I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna start on that middle line, and I'm gonna cut a good ½ inch, but at least a quarter. And you probably know where we're going with that in a minute, okay? Now, this definitely is what Ricky teaches. Get your hands safely behind your fabric so that you can hold both of these fabrics, okay? But behind nice, like this. And now gently curve, so you can see I can go up. I can kind of imagine where that other inch mark is on the other side. Okay, and I want you to note, if you didn't see it, let me just close this safely, that yes, the fabrics will start to veer a little bit. This is why I wanted you to only use a 22-inch or shorter strip to learn the technique, okay? Because the longer the strips, the more it's gonna veer, and when I'm building quilts like this, every few strips I marry together, I will square the project so it doesn't get out of control visually, okay? But back to this project, back to the learning. So what we're gonna now do is we're gonna separate out our parts and pieces, and we're going to take this scrap, which yes, most certainly could be joined to this scrap, but that's in curved piecing 202, folks. We're still in 101. So we're gonna take these really big, wide strips with that 1/2 inch or at least 1/4 down here overlapped. And now let's get in ready to stitch these together. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna lay these right sides together. This is where we're gonna start, so I am gonna flip my fabrics over. Coming in here, and I do not have an edge guide on today, but I'm gonna really do my best to honor this 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm gonna take a few stitches. Oh, I wanna make sure I've got my needle down. That's really important. If you've got a machine that offers needle down, engage it. Okay, and now I've even got the camera backed up a little bit. I don't know if you can see, but down here it's going to start to wiggle away. So this 1/4 inch up here is quilting as we know it, right? So I want you to do that 1/4 inch stitching, but then as your fabric starts to veer away, you're going to use your hands in kind of a braiding technique. So I'm actually going to hold one fabric with one hand and one fabric with the other, or I might put my hands right here at the machine, and I'm just going to manipulate it so that my brain sees the fabrics as straight edges going towards that 1/4 inch. Whoops, again, that's why I wanted you to do a gradual curve while you're learning the technique. Back to the machine. So now I just kind of pulling the orange fabric under the blue. Should have mentioned if I didn't, my fabrics are right sides together, but I think we talked about that. Letting the feed dogs do a majority of the work. Okay, right now I feel like the orange is going a little blind, so I can kind of pull this back over here. Nice gradual curve here. Okay, just kind of letting it all flow through. Maybe you notice I came over here with this hand, this long, nice gradual arc. I'm gonna go ahead and come up and over that. If I ever need to recalibrate, I'm gonna pause, I'm gonna stop, maybe at a high point or a low point so that I can get myself reorganized. And oh, as the fabrics start to get closer towards the end of the sewing, I'm gonna actually usually flip over at least my top hand so I have a little bit better grip. So if you can see, maybe you'll notice the grip on my hands now. Still looking at the 1/4 inch guide on the stitch plate, that line right under there, watching the edge of my foot, trying to keep it as even as possible. Careful not to sew any corners into the rest of your project. Now our corner's getting a little bit more steep, so I'm coming in up there and just follow that out to the edge, right? I'm not gonna necessarily backstitch, of course you could. Let's cut the thread, get this out of here, right? And right now it's got kind of a wavy, kind of a waffly to it. So what I'm gonna do as I press this is I'm gonna use the tip of the iron today. Let's still try to keep our darker fabrics up. But as I first start to do this, I'm gonna come in here now first with the tip, and I'm gonna kind of push into the seam allowance with the tip. And then I'm gonna press it over. I'm gonna press it over nice, just like that. Okay, real easy, real simple. Checking the back, if it had gotten too many of these things going on, of course I would reorganize and repress. I do not take the time to clip any of these gradual curves. If they get really rowdy and you want to give them a little snip to settle them down, feel free. You just trimming not all the way to the thread, but just down near to the thread. Okay, so that's easy. That's step one. That's learning how to do it, folks. That's where I want you to be in just the beginning phases, okay? Now, let's have a little bit more fun while I've got your attention, and let's go ahead and start with a skinnier strip. Again, I don't want it to be too large. As a reminder, we are still right sides up on both pieces. This is my scrap edge, and so I'm just gonna go ahead and consume that now. I'm finding myself a line. I'm gonna give myself my marker. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to cheat it, but now I'm going to cheat it back a little bit. Now let's go for it. Let's just make a nice little, let's stay by the rules. But if I wanted to marry in a gradual or curve, of course I could have done that. All right, let's go back to our regular ideas, regular scheduled programming. Okay, I've got my overlap here. Once again, I'm going to start by giving myself a good, let's call it an inch, at least a half inch, maybe a quarter to hang on to. And now let's just practice getting a little bit more aggressive with our curves. Notice again, it's fanning a little bit at the end. Don't panic, it's just quilt making, all right? If you want to get to the advanced level, like I was saying earlier, please save these. You might even want to take and mark them together because that is stitchable, folks. As a matter of fact, maybe we'll do one of those here before we sign off today. But let's get this stitched together again. Okay, that's my starting point. So now I'm going to flip this over. And this is where things can kind of become a challenge. So as I get into the machine and if I build too many of these, I want to make sure I'm working on the proper side or cutting from the proper side of my fabric pieces so that I can actually have the weight of the quilt on the top of the feed dogs. I hope maybe that made some sense. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Stitching in, 1/4 inch straight, and now we're just going to rock these curves. Nice and easy, nice and gradual. My eye can see that purple. So that was just a bit of a wave. See that funky part right there? We're just going to sew around that. That was just some poor rotary cutting. Happens to all of us. Don't be ashamed. I'm speaking to myself. And around we go. Switching the grip, switching the hands. Now I've got the overhand grip on the fabrics, sliding the purple, pulling the blue. And if I don't come out perfect at the end, folks, what do? Nothing. I don't even worry about it. On this kind of thing, it's free piecing, right? This is not precise piecing. We have other videos on this channel for precise piecing, but today this is free piecing, curved piecing, okay? So now again, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to hit it first with the tip of the iron, pushing into the seam, pushing into the threads. Okay, and presto changeo. Just like that, okay? Now, for fun, let's go ahead and just stitch this one together as well to see if it's possible. I do believe it is, and it should be. It's pretty skinny, but let's see what that looks like at the end. So yes, I'm going to start here, down where that straight cut was again, match those up. That's partly what's so beautiful about that straight startup. No one will notice in your project. Oop. And actually, folks, the secret is the skinnier the pieces of fabric, the more like ribbon they behave. So you can see that with very easy control, I'm able to bend these fabrics around fairly nice and easy. And in a lot of my projects, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but not all of the piecing is curved. Some of the piecing is curved so that it gives the illusion of it all being curved, but it doesn't need to be because a lot of that I like to cover with applique anyway, in a rhyming way. All right, stop it, Rob. Let's just press this out and call it a day. Okay, again, hitting it with the tip. Just go ahead and press to that thread. Press it over. This is going to be a little bit, as easy as it was to stitch, it might be a little bit wonkier to press. But we have a seam. That seam is pretty cool, I think. And then, like I was saying, one of my tricks would be to come in and actually sew that straight seam right there. But that's probably something for another video. So again, folks, I'm so glad you were here to catch this demo. I hope you learned how to do your curved piecing. As a reminder, as you begin doing it, start with your wider strips, like 3, 4, 5 inches. These are just your scraps. Don't let them get any longer than 22 so that as you're cutting them and they fan out at the end, they don't fan out too far, because the longer the strip, the more they're going to fan. It's just the nature of how it does it. Make sure you're using a sharp rotary blade. As a matter of fact, in the link in the description below, we've got a great set of rotary blades for you here at Stitchin Heaven, so make sure you're always using a sharp blade for your safety and the benefit of your cutting. And with that, folks, I cannot wait to see you in another video. Until then, please stay well. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.